Right then. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Discussing Tabletop.
Hello.
It is, of course, the last day of May. Hope everybody's having a great one. I'm tired. You're paying attention to what's going on with me. I'm tired. But I'm here running the show. Worm's nice enough to have a little bit of delay here with me having to get in a little late to set things up. And so hopefully...
I ended up making it a little bit longer because, you know, I actually have an alarm set for just because the time, and he's like, give it a little bit more time. And then I got caught up playing a video game and was like, oh, wait, it's way past.
It wasn't that bad because it's sort of like I got in here and then I like poked at you and it was like 5-10 minutes after that when you popped it. So it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
mean, if you want to poke me, you should DM me so it actually pops to me.
That's
you know, gives
true.
You a little ping.
I should have done an ad, but I was also just being like hybrid. A little bit there.
Yeah.
Alright. So, hey, you know, it's been a busy weekend. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. Let's, why don't we dive into our news? Because there's some topics that we can kind of chat and go over things as we go. And this is just a kind of combo with the other week. We talked about the secret layers for Final Fantasy. And apparently there's a super drop they're going to do for summer. That is basically the Final Fantasy ones that we talked about, plus these three, which are all done by artists, which I think is an interesting thing. I always like the secret layers that showcase a certain artist. I think that's one of the points in time where you can get those people that really love art styles, and I do believe this is the better place for secret layers. But again, it also comes down to art, price, and kind of stuff like that, and I'm not going to lie, it feels like I don't know the prices of any of these. Some of these look expensive, others I know are dirt cheap in here. That's the thing. It's sort of like there's some of these I point out. I'm like, yeah, that's like the Phil Folgio one. Only one of these cards might be expensive. I don't think Goblin Bombardment is expensive, and I know that Orcish Lumberjacks and Constant Mists aren't, because those are two cards from classic sets I knew about. And they went out of style very long ago. So it's sort of like, it's an interesting art style, but I don't know. And then the Miri Sakabashira that's a hell of an art style.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what he might have like worked on otherwise.
Ooh,
I don't see.
Phil, I recognize kind of the style a little bit, I think. I've seen that before.
Oh, yeah, Phil? Who's Phil?
I think he's done other Magic art before.
Oh, Phil, yeah.
It does say he's done other Magic.
I know Frank, the third guy, has been doing Magic for a while, so.
Yeah, but also does like a lot of fantasy art and stuff.
Oh, yeah, Phil, oh, yeah, I remember, yeah, Phil does also a lot of art
Frank
for...
So it's like the first, like Frank is big, but so we got some like bigger artists, and I'm like, I don't know
yeah, two people who are just Magic artists that they said go to town, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Frank does also fantasy art.
Well, Phil I don't think does. Well, he did do old Magic art. I don't think he does it anymore, but
yeah.
No, he says he's been bringing it for decades, so maybe he has.
Hello, sir. What have you done?
Yeah.
You are a name that exists and has done stuff. Your book. You published a lot of art and stuff. Cool. Great. You had yeah, there isn't a lot of information. I guess.
I mean, he has like so the middle guy. Yeah, the middle guy I think is just like someone who's part of the art scene in Japan.
It says he's a comic book artist.
Oh, okay. So is that what you found? I mean, honestly, I feel like you're probably, if you're in the art scene in Japan, you probably do that at least somewhat.
Yeah. He has some published manga. I don't recognize any of their names off the top of my head. But it doesn't mean
okay, yeah, they're kind of like weird, almost surrealist mangas.
Yeah, he's got I think that's his entire
I see them now.
Surrealist stuff there too.
Yep.
So it makes sense.
Not entirely, but yeah, a decent amount of it.
I mean, it makes sense that he draws really weird versions of creatures and stuff like that. And stuff. And, oh yeah, and they did the. So this is the second exhibition of Frank, because they did Frank thing before, and I guess because he's done some Magic-related stuff, but he's also done a lot of like, old fantasy pieces and stuff. Like that.
He's done. So Frank has done fantasy even outside of like probably just worked with wizards in general, not just Magic.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Phil is mostly just Magic.
Yeah. So. Anyway, so yeah. I mean, art ones are fine. I think these are the points in time where, like, I usually say, like, well, if the price isn't good and you really like the art, it's fine. You know, these are a little bit more on the. I feel like when they are showcasing particular artists, a little more. Maybe I'm more forgivable for like if they don't have a lot of financial base value, but you know, again, if you like it or not. So, mine.
Phil also worked for DC Comics for a little bit.
Alright. But that's the little update there. That's the super drops. If you're interested in those artists, and check out those. You know? Check out the prices of it. Alright, let's talk about a Psion. I mean, we should. It's the big. It's kind of interesting thing that came out this week.
I briefly looked at this.
I didn't really look over it, but I saw a couple of videos about people talking about it. So I have a basic idea. Mechanically, it's kind of in between a wizard and a sorcerer. I guess spell-wise, it functions more like a wizard, but has these energy die that are basically very much so the sorcerer's brain, work, think.
Meta magic?
Don't they like some? Anyway, I'm forgetting stuff already off the top of my head, and I described this already. Anyway, regardless of what you can kind of compare it to, it's interesting. It is interesting. We are getting a lot more Unearthed Arcana now. It's a weird spot to be in because it's sort of like part of me is kind of like, a 5e and stuff like that. But then they put out a bunch of these Unearthed Arcana and show off a bunch of these interesting things, and I'm like, this is good stuff to talk about, That's why I kind of think it's like in a weird spot to be in with a lot of it. It's an interesting place. That 5e is at, I guess. But Psion's a traditional class, of course, psychic powers. Yeah, they got like an energy die, which you get a number of. The dice increases as you level, and you can use that to fuel a bunch of abilities. Prepare spells. You can cast a sonic spell that doesn't require a verbal or material component, even if it includes a V or M. But if it has materials that have a cost, you have to have it. So basically, psionic spells normally don't require anything but somatic components. That's kind of an interesting thing.
Okay, I do not like the energy die, how they're using it.
Yeah, it's unusual.
So, because, so the first one, telekinetic propel, you can push or pull a creature equal to 5 times the number rolled on your energy die. So you at least can do less by choice, so you don't have to push all the way. But it's like, okay, well, I mean, that's a big range. 35 to 30 feet is a big range. And then you can telepathic connection for a number of minutes equal to your sonic level. Your range of telepathy increases by a number of feet equal to 10 times your rolled number. So it starts with a base of 5 feet, and you always have it on. But you can expand it to 10 times, which is, again, 1 to 60 feet, or even, later, because it's like a D. I mean, imagine, D12, that's, for the push, that's, 5 to 60 feet, and the connection is, 15 to 125 feet.
I'm gonna tell you, the base uses of your energy die suck. higher levels adds things in that are interesting. Like level 2, you begin to get some of those things where the dice actually has some uses, the sonic modes, where really you're going to be mostly using defense mode, occasionally attack mode, because the big thing is weapon from your damages do damage from your weapon attacks, sign spells, and sign features ignore resistance to psychic damage, which is the big part of attack mode. Cool. Psychic damage resistance. Thumbs up. Yeah, it comes up, just not that much.
Yeah.
And when you roll damage from
the defense mode where you roll the die to add the number to your saving throw, that's like a traditional use. It's almost like a bardic inspiration.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, either ignoring psychic resistance or re-rolling dice on a damage, that can be good if you roll really badly, but, like, it's also, like, it's equal to your intelligence modifier, the dice you re-roll, so it's kind of like, for an energy
so
die,
the attack mode, you just expend the energy die, and its roll doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Just get rid of the die, and then whatever your intelligence modifier is, you re-roll that number of dice for whatever damaging spell. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's... And the thing is, the amount of time where, like, you need it... Like, I feel like when you're getting those high numbers where I have, like, a +5 modifier, I'm going to be doing big damage anyway, and the difference on, like, rolling 5 more d6s... Maybe if I rolled all 1s on them and I had a really shitty roll...
I actually think it is good. Especially for... Yeah, I like attack mode and defense mode, which are terrible names. I actually think they fixed that.
I think the attack mode's a little bit more situational.
I use my psionic energy in attack mode.
Yeah, I just think I feel like the attack mode is a little bit more situational, where it can be useful than the defense mode, where, like, yeah, adding bonus die to your saving throws is just great.
Yep.
And the thing is, because of the way they've reworded it, you roll it after you fail. So, yeah.
Yep. I mean, they do a lot more of that now. Honestly, I like Telekinetic Propel. It's just got such a range. Like...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other weird thing about this class, which is one of those things that I do kind of agree on discussion of it, it's kind of weird that they do it this way, is you can spend hit dice to do things. You burn your body.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's kind of...
I mean, it's fine, but it's like... I think the complaint that I heard from someone, which I kind of can understand, but it's kind of like I don't do enough of it, is it is another thing you have to keep track of. You're not only keeping track of energy dice, you're managing your hit dice, too. That you can do.
You're already doing that. I don't know. I feel like everyone normally has that.
Normally, you only worry about that when you're taking a short rest or a rest or something. You're not really doing that in the middle of combat. It's like another number you're worried about during combat, and like also then like managing, am I going to use so much that I don't have the ability to heal then outside of combat? You know, I can understand how it can be more. It's not necessarily, if you're fine with numbers like that, I don't think it's a problem whatsoever. But I can see that there are some people that might be turned away from that kind of thing. Just opening that. And then, yeah.
Wait, do you only get...
And then the level 20 is pretty cool, because it's when you spend a dice, you can spend 2 hit dice to roll 2 more dice, so you're rolling 3 dice instead. So, I mean, that's, like, you know, pretty cool. I think they're really cool.
Oh, the attack and defense mode you can only use twice per long rest. You're only doing...
Yeah.
So that's I can see why you... But here's the thing, like, you can only expend the hit die at rolling initiative. It's just like, okay, I mark that down and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't see the problem there.
Again, it's each have to roll 1 or more samples. Oh no, there's 2 things for the search. You can also spend your hit dice after you roll a energy dice to treat a 1, 2, or 3 as 4 on the die.
Oh, the Sonic Surge.
Yeah. That is also the one where you can spend a hit dice to get one of your modes back. Ah. So yeah.
Okay, that's nice, honestly. The Sonic Surge, using a hit die to turn your push into an actual push instead of a wimpy.
Yeah, and that also could be, because it's just when you roll an energy die, that also could be like, oh hey, I need to get a 4 here. Just make this save I'm spending my energy dice on. You know.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. And then we have... What are these?
What are the hit die for Scion?
They're D6s? Yeah, D6. They're squishy.
Okay. Yeah, they are. I definitely think that is nice, because basically, as long as it saves you more than 6 damage, you have made up for your hit die.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty easy calculation.
Yeah, no. I think it's fine. And then you get the Psionic Disciplines, which are very much... I'd say they're kind of like Warlock invocations. So their special abilities kind of like that. Which give you more uses of Psionic Energy dice. So
yeah.
You get a little bit more options. I mean, you do get a decent number of dice. You get 12 at 17 is your maximum, so you get a bunch. So having these abilities. And some of these, like, disciplines are pretty cool. Like, there's a good selection of them where they can be pretty useful. They have their spell list, which is fine. And then their subclasses, which are Metamorph, Psywarper, Psykinetic, and Telepath. The Metamorph gets some cure abilities and is basically like flesh warping. So neat. You get stretchy arms and can make bones out of your turn your bones into blades.
This has the same issue as the Spell Sword. Or the Elven Blade Dancer? Blade Dancer, that's what it's called. Just mages, just because they have such low hit dice, have a real problem with... Funny enough, depending on if they can get shield and mage armor. Okay, they can't get mage armor. Do they get shield? They do not get shield.
Yeah, don't get shield. Yeah. I think that was the one thing that was kind of like pointed out when I heard when we were talking about it. For like some of these more the attack ones, like this one.
Yeah, you need shield because you're already so squishy. It's more like if you get hit, you like. I mean, if you look at on the Sunday game, how you all are like kind of complain like, oh come on, Hedwig, you never get hit. I'm like, yeah, because when I get hit, I lose half my health bar.
Yes, you take a lot of damage, right? I'm not. I've noticed that more recently that like when you get hit, it's just like whoop, gone, and it's like you are extra squishy. Look, as a character that has terrible AC and is also squishy, I understand this. I'm slightly less squishy and slightly better AC than you.
You've rolled bad enough on your hit die to where you're like, I've rolled well on my hit die with that character, but I'm still like 2 hits to like die.
Yeah.
So
I think I have like 2.5 hits. That's kind of where I'm like, I'm slightly more squishy just because I've rolled so terribly. I mean, it's an interesting idea, and like I'm guessing the like extended reach might help them get into melee, but it is seemingly made to be more melee based. And I don't think that, as you said, I don't think it necessarily works for like changing a full spellcaster kind of character into one. So yeah. So that's what I have to say kind of about the Metamorph. Interesting idea, but it's probably might not be the best character to put it on. The Psywarper is our teleporter. They can get
honestly, I feel like the Organic Warper, if they don't have a way for them to get more armor, is actually a candidate for armor training.
You can get a natural flexibility at 10th level that gives you +2 AC.
Oh yeah. Along with any equipment you're wearing or carrying becomes pliable. Yeah, but here's the thing, that stacks with armor, so it's just a +2 to AC. It doesn't say while not wearing armor.
Yeah, I mean it's a bonus, but it's like
Now, Superior Stride does require you to not wear armor, which allows you to dash as a bonus action, but...
Yeah.
But I'd be fine giving that up to have, like, heavy armor. I mean, heavy armor, plus that +2, I mean, add a shield.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 4 feats. That's basically all of your feats, but hey.
I mean, getting some resistance to a damage of your choice for the Stony Epidermis, that's nice, but again, like, give it 1 out of how many? You know, and you might not be fighting enemies that are doing all the same. And
yeah, generally, though, you do tend to fight creatures that have one primary type. Actually, no, that's not true. Enemies generally have 2 types. Most have a physical and an elemental.
But I mean, like, you know, certainly speaking, like, you might just be fighting something where, like, doing bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing do you. But again, like, it might not. So you never know. It can be helpful, I guess, to make you a little bit less squishy.
Honestly, I feel like what would make them way better, what this one way better, is if it just gave you medium armor training. Like, seriously, like, if you got that, well, medium armor in 5e, I think that's not that much better than mage armor. Well, no, light armor is definitely no better than mage armor. Yeah. So that's why you need at least medium armor.
I don't know. I don't know how to, like, maybe make that less squishy. Yeah, Psy Warper. You can use Misty Step once for free, and you can use a Psionic Energy Dice to get that villain back. Or Long Rest, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can just teleport something with its telekinetic propel instead of just pushing.
Yeah. Light armor gives you 12 plus dex. Mage armor gives you 13 plus dex. So it's actually in the range of low medium armor, which is Chain Shirt, which is 13 plus dex, but that only has a max of 2. Half plate gets you up to 15. And so that I would argue that 15 plus 2, and then you can get that plus 2, it gives you 17. Then you're actually like one step away from shield plate training, because I think you need medium armor to do shield training. And then you can get 19, and then that plus 2 at levels 10 gets you 21, which actually makes you pretty hard to hit, because you do not have the shield cantrip. And if you remember, like, I as a wizard with a d6 hit die could get up to 25. I'd still get hit sometimes.
Yeah. No, I actually kind of really like the Psy Warper. You can use an energy dice to turn Shatter into basically a giant fireball, which is really cool. And it also acts as a black hole, so that's kind of cool too. Okay. When you Misty Step, you get a free cantrip as part of casting Misty Step. And the other thing is, I do like the 14th level one, where you can just teleport a bunch of creatures 150 feet, and if they're unwilling, they make a wisdom save. 150 feet straight up. Everybody that was here that fails a wisdom save, that's one of our enemies, take 15d6 damage. All pro.
Huh?
Level 14, mass teleport. Choose huge or smaller creature with a... You spend 4 energy dice and within 30 creature up to your intelligence modifier, and you teleport them to a space you can see within 150 feet. And if they're unwilling, they make a wisdom saving throw. So it's just teleport things up in the air and drop them.
I mean, yeah, that is very powerful, honestly.
Yeah.
15d6 of damage with no save, because fall damage doesn't have a save.
Yeah. Or, definitely speaking...
Like, you can do an athletics roll as a reaction, I think, to, like, reduce the damage by 10 feet, but that basically just removes 1 die, you know?
Yeah. No, I like the... I don't know... Again, that's 14th level, so whether or not that's too powerful or not, that's pretty high level already. But, you know,
yeah.
I like the idea of the Psy Warper a lot. That's the one that I'm like, oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, you have to expend 4 psionic energy die, but honestly, if you're near a large group of people, a large group of enemies, that is very handy. Especially if you're fighting a large number of, because it's just any number of creatures. Yeah. Oh, equal to your intelligence modifier. Never mind.
But at 14th, you're going to probably have the +5 at least.
+4.
+4 at least. And that's the thing is too.
Yeah, it's pretty rare for people to go to +5. I mean, unless you're like really focusing down. Like wizards tend to, though, because they have a very good, intelligence modifier, or they're all about their spells.
So I could see maybe a Scion going that route, but that's another one that I can kind of point to, maybe. But here's the other thing too about when I think about it too. It's like that has a lot of versatile uses. That could be, hey, we're going to teleport 150 feet. our team's getting out of danger. Or it doesn't have to be like the straight up fall. It could just be, I'm teleporting some other things out of the battle, or into like a hazard or something like that. Granted, you have to be able to see it, but teleport them over like a chasm or something. Good luck, you don't fly.
Yeah.
The third subclass is the Psychokinetic. This gets shield. Instantly more powerful. They get shield.
Yeah, they do better. Okay, I would argue that. Yeah, honestly, the Metamorphosis should get shield. Like, they really should get shield.
Yeah. It gets a better attack.
Like lesser restoration. Like, I say throw out Inflict Wound and change that for, because the idea is like healing yourself, not other people. Or altering yourself, not other people. Therefore,
I guess because you can do it to other people. Because with a polymorph, maybe you can do it to other people. It's like, I manipulate your flesh to destroy it. Haha.
Yeah, but I feel like at level 3, it's better to make your first level spell level 3 shield instead of inflict wounds.
True.
Especially because, yeah.
Bone shield, like bones pop out of your arm to block a show. It's gross. You're already kind of gross with bone pillow powers.
Yeah, I think they need shield just because that's the only way they're going to survive any length of time.
I mean, at 6th level, they do get a bonus to shield, which I think is kind of neat. They can spend an energy dice to basically repel, bounce, and attack back with shield. So that's kind of a neat thing. They also get enhanced telekinesis, but 5e/5.5 telekinesis isn't great. It's okay. So, sure, you don't have to concentrate on it anymore. And it lasts longer, and you can use it on gargantuan creatures. It's still just an okay spell. 5e telekinesis. It's not terrible, but it's like, for a spell of that level, it's just kind of okay, and has some uses. I'm not gonna lie about that. But it's not as like, there are probably other spells at that level. That's 5th level.
It's a 5th level spell, yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's not bad. It's just yeah.
Yeah, the issue with telekinesis is that, especially for creatures, I mean, objects is a little bit better because you can, I'm just going to carry by creature. So you can pull things out of people's hands. They get a strength saving throw, so that could be used to disarm people. You can exert fine control with telekinetic hand. So,
but like, when I think about other uses for telekinesis that used to exist, like, this is spending 4 energy die just to make sure its telekinesis doesn't have concentration.
So telekinesis lasts 10 minutes. But as far as a creature goes, you can't hold a creature for more than 1 turn. So it ends at the end of your next in any direction spell until the end of your next turn. The creature has their restrained condition. And if you lift it in the air, it's suspended there. It falls at the end of your next turn unless this option is used again and it fails on it again and it fails the save. So basically, it gets a chance to break out every turn.
I mean, like, again, restraining something isn't necessarily bad, but again, like,
auto crits, it's actually pretty good.
It's an ability check versus strength check, too.
Yeah.
So, like, as soon as I said, oh, you can affect now a gargantuan creature with this, what's a gargantuan creature's strength going to be?
It depends, but yeah, it's usually high.
I'm like, it's an interesting idea, but I feel like it, in comparison,
it also drops the duration to 1 minute. Yeah, this isn't worth 4. I don't mind it being a 14th level ability, but I feel like it should keep its 10-minute duration, and maintain its 4 psionic energy, or drop it honestly down to 2, and then and then have the no concentration 1 minute thing. Because then it's just
Yeah.
basically like two for a whole combat of being able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, again, I feel like only one of these feels like it's got like I'm not gonna lie, they all have very interesting flavor, but they're not all feel like they're fleshed out well, which is fine. I mean, this is an Unearthed Arcana, but I can definitely see some like goals here. Telepath gets mind abilities, which are fine. I mean, I think the one that's like it's cool, mechanically.
And telekinesis does take your action, so
yeah. For the telepath, the mind infiltrator is a cool idea. It doesn't feel like it's worth of a thing. It's basically you can make it that if you probe someone's mind or detect thoughts they don't know about. That has a lot of good role-playing options, but, like, that's it.
That doesn't bother me. I don't mind role-playing options. See, what I dislike is purely role-play effects. I don't mind role-play options. I just what they needed to change, because like the role-play effect of you don't age is like a 15th level ability. Your only 15th level ability. That's what they needed to get rid of, because it offers no in-game effects. It's purely flavor.
It is the thing that I feel like I would have liked the altering of detect thoughts, because if I'm comparing it to the other level 3 abilities of all the other ones, they're all really better than this one. The Metamorph can do the limb extending, the Psywarper gets Misty Step, the Psykinetic gets the Telekinetic techniques, which are all a lot better than you just don't know you're being detected thoughts. And it doesn't require concentration. You don't normally use detect thoughts in combat, I'm gonna say. Like, if maybe you gave detect thoughts like an extra combat-y thing, like maybe you can, like, if you're using it in combat, you can detect a weakness of an enemy or something like that. I think Mind Infiltrator would be a little bit neater, but I think it's fine. It's just, it doesn't feel like, compared to the other level 3 abilities of the other subclasses, it's kind of weak in comparison.
So it does work as an anti-stealth ability.
Okay.
Detect thoughts. Because you automatically know the presence of thoughts. You sense the presence of thoughts within 30 feet of yourself to creatures that know language or are telepathic. Okay, so it has to be sentient creatures, so not animals, like that know languages. You don't need thoughts. You don't read thoughts, but you know a thinking creature is present. I guess you don't know their location, you just know they're present.
Yeah.
The
Empowered Defense mode's cool. Where you get an extra D4 on top of... when you're in defense mode, whenever you make a saving throw, you add D4 to it. So that's on top of possibly spending the energy dice to get additional bonuses to saves. You just get a D4. So, I mean, that's... Okay, so that's kind of cool there. And then you get intelligence modifier to damage from doing a sign and cantrip. You've got a telepathy out to 30 feet. And you can use a reaction to spend one of your die, roll a die, and add a number roll to the d20. Oh, so you can basically help a creature out. You can kind of bardic inspiration with your energy. At 10. So it's not bad.
Well, 6th level is really nice, because that's just bonus cantrip damage.
Yeah. I think the thing is, Telepath feels weak early on in a lot of ways in comparison to the other ones, but gets really heavy up top. Because I'm sorry, I just also read level 14, where, a good old confusion. You roll twice, and you as the person who casts confusion get to choose which one of the behaviors they get. What does the creature do during confusion?
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
I don't mind Mind Infiltrator. I agree, it is a little... It's limited in its use, because, I also like the flavor. Basically, this has a lot of flavor, but not a lot of substance to back up that flavor, which is what's hard.
That's kind of what I feel like, too. Is I would have liked at least a little bit of substance for some of the early level abilities. because I felt like there was a little bit better of a balance in some of those other classes for that, substance and flavor.
Oh wait, okay. Concentration. Okay, here's the thing about this one. So first off, you already have Detect Thoughts. I thought it was like you spend 2 Sonic Energy die to cast Detect Thoughts without a spell, but it's when you cast Detect Thoughts. So you still have to spend you have to still spend your spell slot on it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's see, I would have done like.
Also,
what they should do is add it so while you're detecting those creatures' thoughts, like it doesn't require concentration, and while Detect Thoughts is active, you can pick a creature and deal bonus damage to them or something.
Because also it costs you 2 energy dice, and
yeah. To be fair, you're using those energy dice out of combat, which means you're probably going to have plenty of them because, like again, I don't mind this, but I do agree that because your entire level 3 is, your entire level 3 is kind of non-combat. Like I would have liked, in fact, I kind of think they should switch Telepathic Hub and Empowered Defense, personally.
Yeah, because Telepathic Hub, I mean, yes, some of these have multiple level 3 abilities and stuff like that, and the Telepathic Hub is also a neat thing, and has some uses, but it's also, like, I feel like that's one of those ones that's, like, that one feels like it could have more both out of combat and combat potential, because it is telepathy to a range with a bunch of creatures. That's fine, but I feel like it's got 2 abilities that are much more utility, and not, like, practical. And I think
now,
that's
with that being
like
said, Bane, Command, Detect Thoughts, and Mind Spike being spells, it's very clear they're saying, hey, you're more of a support, which is fine. There are support classes. I think support is underrated in D&D. So many people want to be the ones doing the attacking. Granted, support is very weak in 5e because of the whole concentration. You can only support people with 1 spell at a time thing.
Yeah.
Which is why 5e actually works better if everyone has some support ability and support each other. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Hey, one of my favorite spells is back with more bonuses and how to use it. The Psychic Lance, where you can say someone's name and nuke them even better. It talks about that.
Oh yeah.
That was like Tasha's or something that I said before. I think. One of those places. Oh. I like the.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, Psychic Lance is the same as it ever was, except I think they just, specified better how the name part of it works. Which was always like a weird extra part about it, like if you knew its name and you don't have to like necessarily see it. I don't think that's ever come up with me casting it in any game I've had been able to cast it. It's just more like, I do 76 psychic damage, and they're incapacitated for a turn. Good luck. I think this. I'm just gonna check the.
A few extra feats, which give you, honestly, minor abilities.
Oh, wild
Psionic-like abilities.
Okay, so basically these are like, you can choose, you only are allowed to take 1 wild talent, and it's like a little Psionic. Okay.
Yeah, Ray of Frost, you can also have the Armor of Agthes, an Ice Knife spell prepared. You also always have certain spells prepared. You can cast a spell once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability. Yeah, they have some of these. You can also use these spells using any spell slot you have when you cast these spells. They require no... Yeah, this is a kind of equivalent to... Oh, and you can change the type to cold damage for your attacks. That's kind of neat. Or other energy types and whatever. Yeah, this is kind of similar to stuff they released in Tasha's, so I'm not surprised that they did more of this. Where it's like you get two spells that you can cast once per long rest, then you also get some other stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's like they give you a cantrip, which cantrips are fun, but again, they're not like usually like super powerful. So, like, yeah, you get a cantrip, a little extra attack, and you also have an extra spell prepared. You know,
Yeah.
Have a small little extra ability sometimes.
I'm gonna be honest, like either the what's this one? Yeah, dude. So the one of the kinesis ones, the amnokinesis, cryokinesis, or do they not have pyrokinesis?
They do. The last one's pyrokinesis.
Oh, I totally didn't see there was another page. Okay, yeah. Would go well with the flesh warper one, so you can do 2 different damage types of your choice.
Yeah. I like the Wild Town feats. Like, they do give a little bit of extra stuff there. You know, again, because it is like it's a cantrip and one little extra casting of a spell, possibly prepared. And maybe like a little extra ability. I always feel like they're very interesting in these kind of rules with feats. So,
yep.
So I gotta be honest, I think this is a fine Unearthed Arcana.
Yeah. I think they fixed the psychic. The Psion. Yeah.
I think they did a good job of it. Like, PowerPoints suck. That's the 3rd edition and the earlier, like 3.5, is like PowerPoints you get. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think they still had some kind of version of PowerPoints in 4th edition. 4th edition Psion was really good.
Okay, I don't remember the 4th edition Psion. That's one I haven't looked into.
I looked into it a while ago because it was later on in 4 it came out. It was one of the controller wizards. So, I think it was fun.
Yeah, ultimately though, I honestly don't mind this. This is definitely a better version of the Psion than the 5e Psion that never got released, because that thing just had so many broken combos and so many completely unusable combos, as in like they were just so, and they never got around to fixing it. So I think that's this is them starting from the ground up, and they did a better job this time.
Yeah, I seeing this is like, it's that kind of thing where, again, I'm a mixed opinion, because sort of like I've just not been very happy with the overall, like, feels like the company direction and then the brand is for D&D. But then seeing stuff like this, I'm like, man, I guess there still are people there that are doing a really good job and trying to put out an actual decent game. I'm happy about that. But then you have Plasma on top of that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys.
Again, like the 5.5e has been the biggest issue it's had, is just that it was underbaked. Like, honestly, even after the errata they put out, it like doubled its effectiveness. But I just think that like they just didn't need to do certain things with some of the classes, like limiting the spell generation for wizards. It's like, okay, well, now you can only do it once per long rest. So it's like, well, either use it all now or don't. It's like, well, that just makes it harder to use.
Yep. It is my big complaint, which happens for both Paladin and Ranger, is not only linking class abilities to spells, but then sometimes using those spells having like concentrations in themselves. That like it's one of those things that's sort of like, it's not necessarily a bad idea. It just needed altered just a little bit to make it not annoying or terrible. It's just like on that precipice of like, cool, I don't mind some directions you took, it just feels half-baked.
Yeah. And yeah, the Ranger literally, they just made it so it's like either use your class abilities or use your spells. There's no using both, which is just the dumbest thing.
Yeah. Not as bad for Paladin, but again, like, I kind of feel like for Paladin, I would have liked to have seen some of the other smites buffed, because I'd smite do damage in, I think what I was talking about, like 90% of the time, you're probably just going to do the damage and smite them.
Okay. They honestly, they did need to nerf the damaging smite anyway, because it really was like, I mean, you kind of said like, oh, I played it and it wasn't that bad, but I remember like the one time I played with it, it was all like, the paladin got all the kills, you know, and so it's like I think I can't be the only person with that experience.
I, can come back and say I think I agree with you that there was need of like a balancing factor in the paladin. I'm just saying, like, I felt like the direction they chose was a good job at doing that, but then it made some of its other class features kind of half moot. Like, again, because despite smites, you choose a spell, and as much as a lot of status ailments are kind of neat, the point of before is you could kind of stack those. You could do the damage and do one of those smites to kind of, like, combine the two of them. That basically... I would have liked maybe that you could cast the other smite type spells and use those as a kind of buff to your other normal smites or something like that. Something like that you could you still have to use the extra spell slot, but you're using now multiple spell slots in a lot of ways. I think there was a way to do it, but they didn't do it here, and I'm like, or maybe make like. When you use the smite attack spell, rather than a bonus action, that make an attack as part of that or something. So that way you can maybe go. I don't know. I don't know what you would have done, but
I think the use of the bonus action does make it better. I actually think that's more balanced, so it's a bonus action. Because the original one, if I remember correctly, the original one didn't require a bonus action. It just worked.
No, you just hit something and could spend the spell slots.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this now makes all of them require a bonus action, which that doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't know if they actually did the thing where creatures who are now immune to spells have like a problem. It's like, oh well, the things the paladin wants to smite are the things that are immune to spells.
No, they didn't fix that.
They didn't.
No, not as far as last time I heard they didn't, but they could have. Like there could be some creatures like with the so you can't smite them anymore. As far as I know.
You can, but
well,
it's just. Yeah. I don't think there's anything immune to magic damage. There's just things that are resistant to it.
Yeah. But again, this just comes down to
or
that
get a
kind of
save
thing of like. I just always felt like with the paladin that like the other smite spells were neat, but they weren't really that great, and you could and that's the thing is you oftentimes would use your spell slots on other things, which I think was fine, but sometimes those other ones could be used because you still didn't lose anything for using them, but now you do, and again it's sort of like the majority of kind of like status ailment-y things that you can do with those other spells don't necessarily, because usually they're like save-based, make up for just pure damage.
No, I agree. Like they're still not better because you still have to. They still basically now get a save.
It's
like
the thing that like I think they needed.
They nerfed one without making the other ones better, so I get that still not being great.
They didn't. They. It's kind of like. Again, I think with the Ranger, you're either just casting spells or using Hunter's Mark. For the Paladin you're either just smiting or sometimes you're casting a spell, but they're like, your abilities encourage you to do the smiting, just like the encouraging Hunter's Mark for a Ranger. You're encouraged to do that. So it's sort of like they lean on one or the other, and it's a problem for both of them. It's sort of like, you just want to do the one. Cool as one.
Yeah, I mean, I think D&D 5e has a real problem with save or suck. Like, so many spells are save or suck, which is just not fun. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, attacks are as well, but many creatures who are focused on attack gets multiple attacks, making it very unlikely for them to not hit at least once. Whereas spells are always one and done. In fact, like I mean, from what I've seen of like fighters and stuff, I mean, like fighters have to like make like 10 decisions in their turn, and then you get to the spellcaster all like, I cast this one spell, that's my turn. Again,
it does kind of come down to a lot of times that there are just better spells, or there just are better abilities a lot of times. And it's unfortunate that that's a hard thing to get away with in general.
I mean, even Pathfinder 2e has that.
Yeah.
Like, why would you ever use what do they call it now? Magic armor or magic whatever. their mage armor, their new mage armor. Why would you ever use that? You know,
it's not terrible because I think it's the hidden in small numbers. It's sort of like you already are getting your level to your unarmed defense. It's just sort of like you start out by getting 1, and it does build up a little bit, but it's sort of like...
No, it does. It never... So, that's the thing. Once you hit, like, level, I want to say, like, 3 or 4, it basically matches what you'd be getting with runes.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that you could put runes on your clothes. Oh, that's right. Yep. That's why it broke. See, that's the thing is, I kept forgetting that exists, because I was using mage armor because I didn't know about that. And the rune stuff is just like, well, you just put a rune on your clothes, and it's just better.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why they've allowed runes on the clothes. It's just, I both understand. I don't.
Technically, you have to wear traveler clothing. Like, specific clothing designed to have runes on them. If you wanted to wear normal clothing, which is another item you can purchase, those items technically can't have runes on them. So, it's kind of like a fashion thing. If you want your character to always be dressed fashionably in fine clothes and get those fine clothes charisma bonus, I think there's like a charisma bonus you get for like wearing the super fine clothes. Then you can argue that mage armor is worthwhile because I'm always the fancy one, you know? But it's basically a spell slot you have to cast every day to trade for a benefit that otherwise is...
And the base armor just costs a silver, so it's just buying the enchantment. So it is kind of goddamn cheap anyway.
Yep. And you have to expend your, like, basically your highest level spell slot. Like, one of your highest level spell slots every day. Because that's the thing. You get the bonuses from higher level spells. That's why, like, I mean, I've talked about this before. If I were going to do mage armor, I would argue that what they should do is give it a dex penalty. Like, you know, they have a lower dex cap, but give you that bonus armor. Basically treating it as wearing armor. Giving it an actual use. So if you want to be a mage who's a little bit more in mid combat, like obviously wizards aren't going to be like super close combat, but
yeah,
a mid-range combatant would be nice to like. Then you can have like a mid-range combatant who actually has higher defense, like basically medium armor level defense. I mean, you're not competing with the heavy armor. I don't think you should go that far, but you know there are medium armor mages in 5e. I mean, the Animist is literally a primary caster who wears medium armor. I feel like there's another one. It's not Cleric, because the Cleric version that uses medium armor technically doesn't get max spells. But I think there's another person who gets max spell proficiency while wearing medium armor. So it's not, like, impossible. It's just... So it's like, there are other people who do it, so being able to trade a spell slot to have, like, a medium armor wouldn't be terrible.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
That was so we got some... Yeah, it's fine. So we got some updates from PaizoCon. I'll put this in some there it is. We know that they're going to be having this Hellfire Crisis where, like, Cheliax and Andoran are competing for a War Shard of Mythic Power from the God's Reign. There's going to be a Gen Con event that's going to be basically taking on this entire thing. And they're talking about their big new book, Battle Cry, which is their war-themed adventures. That's where they're going to have their commander abilities and stuff like that. So, that'll be interesting. They're talking about organized play, all the Starfinder releases coming up.
Yeah, I'll be getting those hopefully soon. Do they have a release day for those?
I don't know if they do here. They don't have in this article. You probably have to make it up.
Scheduled for September 2025, so still got a few more months.
We do know there's apparently. They do mention for Starfinder that they will be a 25th level creature in Alien Core, Ilamantula, to cover the Galaxy God. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So, Galaxy Guide May, Player Core August, GM Core September. That's the.
So, I've read this thing here, and I missed this earlier, and it just makes sense. Because Starfinder's so far in the future, there are more things like probably devils, demons, and daemons. And so there's a daemon that's just the manifestation of social media and toxicity.
Huh.
The cyst daemon. I'm like, it makes sense that in a futuristic world where there's technology, the incarnations of evil and chaos and like law and stuff will have like versions of it that'll manifest equivalent to what the fuck's going on in those time periods. God. So we're getting the Shining Kingdoms book about the 6 nations in that region. A little update on those ones. In November, so we're getting a Draconic Codex, which actually I'm very happy to get a Draconic Codex because I have so many questions about what the fuck is going on with dragons after we got into the remaster. Because, like, you can kind of tell where some replacements are, but there are a few dragons here and there where you can kind of guess where the dragon we replaced with, but it's not necessary. Like, there's, like, certain dragons that, like, don't fit the normal metallic chromatic of the old days. So it's sort of like, where is it?
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
So I'm mad. I'm mad, but they know their fan base well enough. They know people have been asking for it.
The Wayfarers! The Wayfarers!
No Bavarians! No Bavarians!
It's all about dragons.
Bavarians.
Yeah, no Bavarians.
Bavarians.
I knew someone was going to ask about that. Oh,
well,
God.
People have been asking for this for a long time. Apparently, it's actually one of their more requested ancestries.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're going to put it somewhere, but they're just like, it's not here. There's not the book for it. This is not the way we're going to talk about it.
I mean, it was such a unique ancestry, like, back in the day.
I think it did include. Gatewatch,
of course,
Walkers. Yes. Yeah, Gatewalkers is getting a full remaster, so that's one of these earlier on, second edition Adventure Pass is getting a full just book that's combining it all. Cool on that one. Mm. And then they've got the 2 main Adventure Passes that are coming out. The Myth Speakers, who are going to basically Galarian's version of Ancient Greece, Iblidos, to go do some stuff there. And then, of course, the thing with Xandergul coming back. Yet another on the list of these Rune Lords ain't actually dead.
Yeah.
Back again.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
okay. Xandergul's not the only one that I know they could actually come back with when I've read up on some of them now. But Xandergul is one of those ones that's like, yeah, come back. There's some that they were like, yeah, these guys are pretty permanently gone. Not many of them.
Okay. I'm happy, by the way, for the creature feature, the next section. Alien Core, they're talking about that. So obviously it's going to be the monster core for Starfinder. So that's probably going to be shortly, if I had to guess, either with the GM Core or shortly after the GM Core.
Yep.
Monster Core 2, though, is fun. That's going to be November.
That's when we get mimics and golems and stuff like that. Where I like how they're like, hey, we're going to go back more like the folklore of golems and like Jewish folklore and its divine connection, more than just like what it was in D&D.
Yep.
And I do like because they had to rewrite Ogathu that they're actually doing some stuff with them. Is that weird? If you don't know, Ogathu were basically the renamed version, which they did back earlier in the editions of Abolus. Abolus were just a type of Ogathu. They have to get rid of Abolus, and so they have all the other Ogathu. So there's kind of like weird holes in some of the Ogathu lore, because there was like, the Aboleth was like the mid-level Ogathu. You know, it was like the basic one. So I'm happy if they can kind of fill in that gap now that they've had to replace it.
Yeah. You know, I actually noticed in Pathfinder 2e, they have a lot more water ancestries. I want them to, I'm kind of surprised they haven't put out a water adventure path.
An adventure path. Yeah. Yeah. Because they got the Aquatic Adventures book, and they have some pretty good definitions. Like, I know, like, if you really wanted to run it, like, the TNZ's World Guide has an entire thing on the nation of Zadao, which is just an aquatic nation.
Yeah.
Sorry,
full screen something.
I did full screen something because I was looking at something there for a second. So, like, there is a lot of really cool information for, like, aquatic or semi-aquatic based adventures, and, like, yeah, it'd be cool if it got an adventure map.
Yeah, but they also have the mermaid, the Amaranthu, Ampharu.
I'm gonna full screen for a second and minimize it. The Adros, which they don't have stats for, which are the shark kind of mermaid people. The Athamarus, the Celestilians, which are the, like, basically the Ursula from Little Mermaid. They're the octopus at the bottom end. Grindylows, which are the, like, octopus goblins.
Anyway, my point. Yeah, but they have
they got a lot.
They got a lot of water-based creatures. Like, I mean, even you know, because that's the thing. That's always been the problem with water in games is, like, 2 ancestries have a swim speed, but, like, you never see water because, let's be real, nobody else has any abilities related to it. And it's like, but they actually have uses. Like, you can do swim speeds and stuff. Breathing is still a problem for most creatures. But there are at least magical ways around that. So it's like, and the rules for water combat aren't terrible in 2E. It's basically just, I think, bludgeoning and slashing weapons get, if you do not have a swim speed, have issues. Something like that. So, but there's spells that get rid of that, like Freedom of Movement, I think, does, or whatever that's called now.
I think there's a lot of potential there for some interesting adventures, and I would like to... Again, I do like how we're having very interesting stories in a lot of adventure paths now, but, like, yeah, it does seem as though there's, like, for some of the adventures and adventure paths, I would like some, like, very different things, but aren't, like, it doesn't need to be mechanically different. It could be something that's just, as you said, like a water-based adventure set in one of the many water-based nations that they do have in Galarian. That's that, you know? It could just be that. Maybe it's just a normal adventure set in an aquatic situation.
All they need to do is put a warning in the beginning saying, because that's the thing. I still think it's hard to mix a water and a land adventure. But if you specify this is going to be a water adventure, make sure your characters have ways to deal with water.
Again, like, it's like they did the small adventure path that was set 100 years in the past in the normal Galarian timeline. They're like, this is set in the past. They specifically say that. It's sort of like, that's why I like the free players guides, because they're like, hey, you're going to be underwater. Enjoy. As soon as you say that, you're like, here's what you should play.
We
got some interesting, some of that stuff we knew about. There's a few new, like, announcements. We assumed we were going to get a Monster Core 2, but having the, like, announcement that it's coming out properly is great to hear. And apparently there's going to be
apparently the Alien Core is also November, because they said November is all about monsters and aliens, so...
Gotcha.
So basically it's going to be... So the release is August, Player Core, September, GM Core for Starfinder, and then November is going to be the Alien Core, so... You have to wait a little bit for that one.
I don't mind that one as much, putting that one last, because I feel like a Starfinder adventure doesn't necessarily need alien monsters.
Well, okay. Here's the reason I don't mind. And that is because it's now compatible with Pathfinder 2e, meaning all the other Pathfinder 2e monsters work for it.
True,
so they already have the monsters. Like, yes, it's better to have the aliens which fit in the world. However, you actually have things you can use anyway already.
If you're just hanging around the Galarian star system, you can just put stuff from there, you know?
Yeah.
Those planets were interconnected for very long times.
That's why I don't mind. Like, 5e said, "Oh, we're gonna make changes to all our monsters." So, but in the but they didn't even say, "In the meantime, you should use the old monsters." But it's like, well, they clearly said they need to rebalance everything, so the old monsters aren't going to be functional. So we don't know how this is going to stand up to the current meta until we get the new monsters, which was the annoying bit.
Yeah, I do also like there are going to be new monsters in Monster Core 2, because they said, of course, the Gob Mob, which is a Hydra with 4 goblin heads. That bicker with each other. See, that's the kind of strange and weird Paizo creativity I always like. And it's one of the reasons I do like going back to Pathfinder a lot. They're like, thank you for that. That used to be in like Wizards and D&D. It hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah, honestly, it's interesting because like I'm listening to a bunch of fairy tales right now, and man, they are kind of insane. Things just that's one thing about fairy tales. Things just happen.
She's just so like just like down on her belly there.
Doing the little belly sit. Yep.
Yeah, she's just lying on her back. Just take care of her belly. Sorry, I got distracted by the cat. I didn't think so.
Yeah, but anyway, fairy tales are kind of crazy, and kind of just makes me think like, oh yeah, weird fairy tale and folklore creatures are like totally not done enough in current fantasy. Pathfinder likes to bring those back though.
Yeah, sure. All right, I want to move on to our smaller topics, but some interesting topics nonetheless that we can talk about, and that we can start with. So, Tabletop Tycoon is acquired 5 board games from Come On Games. Come On Games has kind of shut down partially after all I guess everything that's going on has kind of shelved them for now. So
they basically said we're not going to be shipping US until we know what's going on. And
they've kind of like laid off a bunch of staff and kind of set down some top projects and stuff too, which is very unfortunate. But in this time, Tabletop Tycoon has been basically taking advantage of it and growing their library, and so they bought some games from Come On. They've been doing some more stuff like that. I think we talked about them getting Trailblazer from Mariposa. I don't recognize. I recognize some of these by name, kind of, but I don't think I've really dove into these games. Like Ankh, Gods of Egypt, I've heard about, and the Arcadia Quest, I heard about both of those. But I don't think I've never played any of those. So it's more lines of products to have. So at very least, we could see maybe those lines continue or new stuff coming in there. I think what's going on is it seems like Tabletop Tycoon has been getting the miniatures board game space, because I'm assuming they have the materials to make a lot of these miniatures.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're probably
They got some publishing material here in the U.S. that they can use, so they can basically get into this part of the industry.
Okay, so yeah, because Come On Games is actually based out of Singapore, apparently.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, and which is probably why they're having trouble. But Tabletop Tycoon is based out of New Hampshire, so yeah, they're American, which is why.
And again,
probably able to.
I do just assume that they might have
pick up some stuff,
some printing capabilities for some of these like miniature stuff. So
yeah, because like also it's like if they know that their main audience is in America and America's going to be like screwing them over for their tariffs for their on their tariffs, then selling an IP might actually be better better for them monetarily.
Yeah. Until they can maybe stabilize some things more, and they have a set number of projects that they do want to work on, and they can kind of do it.
Yeah, because Come On Games, despite the fact that they're based out of Singapore, is like I feel like their main market is America, is the U.S.
I think that's true too. I just I think they've done some good things, and I just hope that they can bounce back. Hopefully. Mm-hmm. So again, there might be a time to expand your stuff, but this might be a point in time to just sell off some of those IPs they have, just to keep things going for the stuff they still have. Mm-hmm. So guess who's back from the dead again? You can't keep a good White Wolf down. Paradox, who owns White Wolf, or did kind of own White Wolf, is technically reviving White Wolf as its own entity. And what they're doing is, they're going to be taking the tabletop RPG development in-house. So they're no longer going to have Renegade developing it, who've been doing a lot of the World of Darkness stuff. So I'm curious what this is going to do to change the direction that all of Vampire 5th Edition, Werewolf 5th Edition, and Hunter 5th Edition have been taking, if they're going in-house. Because I doubt this is the same White Wolf that's in the old days White Wolf. This is probably just a new tabletop development house in Paradox, honestly.
Well, literally, like 2 years ago, there was a bunch of racist stuff that happened again with White Wolf, which is why Paradox was like, we're shutting them down, sort of. So I guess now they're just moving it in-house. I'm just hoping they don't bring over any people from White Wolf.
Yeah. So it's going to rebrand their World of Darkness, which was their video game division, as part of this, too. So I guess they're merging, because their video game division was just working on Bloodlines, too. It looks like, or was involved with it. So they're basically like, hey, you guys are working on the tabletop, you can also kind of have Bloodlines, too. Which, again, is fine if it's supposed to be a tabletop-based video game, because those can have connections together.
I mean, yeah, Paradox, honestly, the idea of it going into the hands of Paradox is honestly, like, encouraging, because Paradox makes good games.
Yeah. And it does look like they're going to try to do more for the World of Darkness properties, because it's video games, tabletop RPGs, board games, streaming shows, and other expressions of the property. So, again, the World of Darkness isn't a bad brand. It's had its attempts to do things. I just think they've never done anything properly. There was a kind of Vampire the Masquerade TV show. It wasn't bad, but it was kind of like, because it was not quite Vampire the Masquerade, it was kind of like half there. They apparently, for whatever deal they made, they couldn't have it be like fully Vampire the Masquerade. So it was like a little weird different. So that kind of like, I understand why it didn't work, because it was like, it was kind of niche, but it wasn't also like, it was its own weird thing off in a corner too. So it didn't get like the Vampire the Masquerade crowd, and it didn't really build hype with anybody then too. And it was also like But, it's experiments like that aren't necessarily good, but they've done a lot of things like now, so maybe they can do better things.
Yeah, it will be interesting, because Paradox is mostly video games, from what I understand. I don't think they do much else. I mean, okay, well, let me rephrase that. Paradox Interactive is a parent company. Paradox Development Studios is basically their video game branch. But they are, on Wikipedia, a video game company as their industry. And that's also where they started. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with like TTRPGs. I do like Paradox. They're a good company. It's kind of like, no, please stop updating our games. We have too much stuff already. That's a good problem to have with a video game company.
They might still work with Renegade. We're not sure how much they're going to separate out or keep with this there. It just might mean that their new development team will have a lot stronger say and kind of develop the direction a lot more than Renegade is or something like that. They still might work together with it, but to take back the reins or something. I don't know. We'll have to see what this means. But it's, like the 4th or 5th time White Wolf's back from the dead? I don't know. It keeps dying, coming back. Or half dying, sort of coming back. White Wolf's the studio that will never die, I don't think. Or at least the branding. So. Anyway, that's what
Yep. Hopefully they kick out all the racist people and make good games again.
Yes. As long as they're good games. Not gonna lie, there's some topics to discuss about that relate to some other things I want to talk about eventually that do deal very well with. Hi, Foggy. You're here too now. Hi, girl. They're both here. Nice to see you, Foggy. You're also here. There are issues that are with some of the old lore and like stuff World of Darkness, but it's sort of like that kind of fine line of like you don't necessarily. We'll have to talk about it one of these days. Of the like, where the fine line is between old lore or lore in a game or the story in a game and things that are problematic, and kind of finding a good point in time where how do you like balance that out to like remove the problematic but keep the soul of what you're doing, which you can do. It just is kind of fucking hard.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard, but anyway.
Well, it feels like that.
It's just a lot of extra work for the GM to have to do. It's not hard. It's just
the company does it too.
Anyway. the company, yeah.
Hey, everybody's favorite anime Fortnite trading card game, which I don't think it really is. It's Union Arena, the trading card game where they keep doing a lot of random anime series. They're bringing Evangelion, so the big classical anime series, the popular one, is coming.
Can you post the link?
I didn't post that. I'm sorry. I forgot to post this one.
I think you were about to, and then you got distracted by cats.
Yes, that explains it. Foggy, Adventure's now slightly sleeping, but Foggy's hanging around. They're both here for some reason. But I mean, this is neat. Evangelion, very popular IP. It really is. It will always be. And so, Union Arena seems to be that place where a lot of these IPs kind of weirdly merge together.
Yep.
It's so random, it feels like sometimes as things. I really do feel like one of these days I should really look into trying or something. See if there's a way to play it online. Just test it out. But anyway, it's not coming out this one, these boosters, until January of next year, so it's a little ways away, but they got a good schedule ahead of time. Again, most TCGs tend to have at least a year ahead of time in schedule. What imagine. So, I thought that was neat. And again, as an old, classic anime fan. Speaking of anime related, but only kind of tangentially, Digimon. I honestly forgot it had a card game that still was being made, and apparently they are getting still more decks and stuff.
Wait, is the old Digimon card game still being made? Is this the original Digimon card game that came out around the Pokemon card game times?
I think so. I don't know for sure. They're releasing after Slumber.
I have a few of those cards.
If it's Digimon CG, that would be the same one. Let me look up Digimon CG and see how long it's been. Digimon CG. It's the card game. Sure. No, this was a newer version of the card game that was introduced in 2020. So I'm guessing the original card game maybe failed or something.
I don't think that lasts more than that. I'm pretty sure that died still in my childhood. That one did not last very long. That's why I would have been surprised if it was related to that.
So again, it's like one of these things is they probably had a revival card game and it's lasted since 2020. So I mean, cool. I mean, it's kind of like that thing of Digimon was always interesting. Again,
yeah.
I can't say I necessarily wasn't a fan.
Yeah, the full lore of Digimon is quite insane. Or I should say, well, okay, let me clarify that. The full lore of Digimon actually makes no sense, but because it's been rebooted about a dozen times. But the actual way Digimon work has become fairly consistent, but it's also nuts. I mean, my favorite is, you have a dinosaur, which evolves into a refrigerator, which evolves into a machine gun, which evolves into an angel for some reason.
Yes. That sounds like Digimon. There's just something weird about it. Anyway, so, yep. This is... So they're getting a booster out in October, but this little article here was for a new deck that's going to be coming out in December, so it's just... Yeah. So, I mean, again, This was more of a, hey, this still exists, and honestly, I forgot it existed until I noticed this week. I think it's neat to talk about that briefly. One final news story then today, and that is a interesting one that is probably not good, and that is eBay and TCGPlayer. So TCGPlayer, if you don't know about it, is a really good site for a lot of tabletop-related stuff, especially Magic. I didn't realize eBay had acquired them in 2022. They did. The employees got a union in 2023. Cool. They're moving their headquarters from Syracuse, New York, to Kentucky. eBay is. And basically, sent the employees home after a meeting on 22nd, affecting 220 people. And apparently their labor union has filed an unfair labor practice charge. Because they're like, hey, you just moved to basically evade, to make the company union-free and evade bargaining. Because you kind of, like, are killing the union by moving the entire company where, like, most of the employees can't move.
Yeah, okay. I see how that works. They're basically just being like, okay, well, this company, this part has a bunch of union people. Let's fire them all, move, and hire new people who don't have
I don't think they're firing them. Like, we're just going to move our headquarters. If you can move with us, you can keep your job. You move from Syracuse to Kentucky. Good luck. We're moving in, like... Because, if they're announcing this May 22nd. They're like, if you can move in, like, a week, good luck. Bye. Because I guess they're just shutting it down instantaneously. Yeah, they're just like, we're shut down, we're moving. So, yeah, no, it feels a little scummy on eBay's part. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So, again, it's like one of those. TCGPlayer is a pretty good source of information. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It's not the only thing I've ever used, but definitely there's a lot of times that I've used it for some basic information, looking at cards and prices and kind of like products that might still exist sometimes. It's very useful. Not having it kind of would suck. And I just, with the move and apparently like losing a lot of the employees, I don't know what's going to happen to it.
I mean, it's probably gonna.
The website will stay.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
well, what's probably gonna happen is there's probably not gonna be a lot of stuff going on. Like, so is it basically just eBay but for cards? Like, is it buy and sell cards but also got some extra stuff to it?
Yes and no. So, it does in a way function as eBay for cards. I will tell you that. But let's say like I wanted to get a Final Fantasy card. Let's say the jumbo cat card. I click on it in TCGPlayer. It gives me the general market price, how the market price has been fluctuating, and then through there, it connects up with a whole lot of shops that you can order it through. So it functions as a middleman for a lot of different places out.
Oh, it's a broker. Got it.
It's a broker. So, yeah. So basically, there's like a lot of like places, and you could probably go to these places directly, honestly speaking, and buy directly from them. But as the broker, you can kind of get like deals on shipping and stuff when you're brokering through there and things like that, and you can shop for the best prices and order in one place and probably like get things like that. So it's very good. Like, and it's not, again, it's a lot of different products. At the top of their screen here, because I'm on their pages, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Lacana, One Piece, Digimon, Star Wars Unlimited, Flesh and Blood. But they also have linked to like a whole bunch of other card games that like you can go into a lot of different ones. How big does Union Arena? Let's take a look at it. These are just some cards, but yes, I don't know how to play this goddamn game. Anime, Fortnite, the Magic, whatever the fuck's going on with Magic now. And hey, we'll see what happens. I hope for the best for the people that are affected by this and can't move with the movement. And I do wish that Love site continues to be as useful as it is. eBay just kind of got, like, I guess it's still useful, but there's a lot of stuff happened on eBay that I can't remember all of it at this point in time that just rubbed me the wrong way about using it as much anymore. I just remember there was some things going on. So, shall we get into our deeper discussion topic then?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of two kind of topics I wanted to hint on because I thought I saw discussions on things related to these. And this one was what I like to call monster species. Why? Why do I want to have this as a topic? Because this is something that, like, I saw some people talking about things like how orcs have been portrayed. And as, like, a creature and an enemy, and if you talk about old D&D, there were certainly stereotypes there, and they're based on Tolkien. And whether or not Tolkien had stereotypes in the way that he had orcs, that's up for debate, but also probably there is some in there, because, again, that time period, it's kind of that kind of mess of things like with that. And so, in our nowadays, we definitely, like, look at these things, like, a little differently, too. Because sort of, like, I feel like a good comparison to monster species is just the bandit. The bandit, that kind of archetype is, it's some bad guy that's chosen to go against the law and basically rob or kill you for some stuff. You are morally okay with defending yourself and beating these guys. Thing about them is, you can kind of say, they've made a choice, whether or not it was, you know, again, things in life that drove you to that difficult choice to not make, but they still have that, I still made a choice to be a bad guy kind of thing. Whereas monster species, basically like intelligent things, tend to be, they're just bad a lot of times, you know, and I think that's been bad writing in old editions of stuff. And this goes beyond just, like, D&D. Just D&D is the easiest one to mention with this and all of its fantasy offshoots, you know, of, like, kobolds, goblins, you know, orcs, all bad guys.
To talk about this, you do have to go, like, you say, oh, it's bad writing, but if you really look at it, it goes back to, like, Tolkien and even further back to fairy tales, where these creatures genuinely are agents of evil.
That's true.
You got the whole, so that's where this came from. Now, I think once they started portraying these people as independent from those sorts of things, that's where you kind of got this weird blur, where they aren't any longer part of this, like, they're no longer fairies which steal children because, you know, like, so, fun fact I actually learned, the fairies in fairy tales can't create anything of their own, which is why they steal things. They can't have children, so they steal children for their own. They can't have, so that's, in a way, fairies are actually, like, slightly less evil. There's also a story about, like, fairies being, paying tribute to devils and stuff, so, like, it's not like they are devils, they're just in line with them, I don't know, or demons or whatever. So, it's like, there's actual agents of evil, you know, things that are inherently evil, like demons and, you know, fairies.
But we kind of got to that point in time, especially like in early D&D, where these things were no longer like connected to that fairy thing, and they were just creatures in this world that were violent and evil and like savage and monsters, and like, you know, that kind of does get into a problem of like, that's not nuanced. And I feel like that's where we're getting nowadays, where we get nuance with a lot of these things.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where, like, I think D&D has handled things okay in certain places and bad in other places.
I mean,
where
D&D
I feel like
has solved their problems just by being like, this no longer exists. Bye, we're ignoring it, even though it creates a bunch of plot holes we're not going to address.
Again, like, it comes down to, I think, better writing for some of these things, too. So it's sort of like, I think I enjoy, I haven't read all the orc origins, but I thought the orc origins for Paizo were pretty good. Just a summary of what it is orcs were basically like primitive Neanderthal level creatures. They were like very early on in their own cultural development. You know who they ran into? Dwarfs. It is down in the Darklands, down deep underground. They got in a fight with dwarfs. They learned about these shiny things called metal and armor from dwarfs. Basically, tribal caveman people got technology through warring with another species. That's not going to do well for your, especially because these were creatures that evolved from, predators. So they were aggressive, meat-eaters, and it does not do good for them, as evolving as a society, now that you've given, the guy lives over in a cave, steel armor and a sword, But again, that's why I feel like the orc culture never really developed heavily. And now that we're on the surface and a lot of years has been going by, more culture's been developing. But yes, they were kind of always shunned and put to the corner because they didn't have a chance to evolve as a society and develop a lot of technologies and things that make several societies able to be more civilized. Think about how probably our own societies evolved over time as we kind of develop things and learn things and understand more. They weren't given that opportunity. And I feel like that's kind of one of those things. That's an interesting way of talking about how they are kind of a little bit more almost feral. Because
they're savage, but they're not evil.
It's sort of societally, mentally, not mentally personally, but as a society, mentally, they hadn't had that chance of developing society the same. They were thrust upon civilization forcefully, and it's not been good for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing that kind of does happen. Honestly, that plot line is the same thing that was the Krogans in Mass Effect, same plot line. They were this tough, violent species that was brought into space because they wanted to be used. People wanted to use them in war, but now that they're in space, their violence and stuff kind of caused them just to want to seek more and more problems until people finally put a stop to it.
Yeah, it's a thing of just it's the Stellaris when you force enlightenment at people. Sometimes it goes badly, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's cultural shock and it's problems. And yes, I do how they're developing for a lot of these more species that have been on the more fringes, that they are developing more societies and they have more reasons behind a lot of the way that they do things. They explain it's not because we're evil, it's because things like instinct or just the way that their societies evolve because of situations. And then there's others that are just they aren't really on that spectrum. Pathfinder goblins aren't really evil, they just are kind of got their own weird way of doing things, and they're just a little they're honestly fair.
I mean, they're more chaos than they are evil.
Yeah, they embrace their natural instincts a lot more, and sometimes that could lead them to be violent against people, and sometimes it does not.
I mean, and then you got kobolds who are basically just the problem with kobolds is they're basically all just children. It's they don't know any better. They're all 2 to 5 years old.
They don't live a long time. They basically have these grandiose ideas that they're great dragons. We are great dragons.
And they tend to form bonds with people, and therefore, with people and creatures, and tend to form bonds and people who, and then a lot of people they form bonds with are the kind of people who take advantage of them, which is why they tend to be evil. So now I do want to say the idea of an inherently evil species is actually still possible within the world of D&D, because they do have gods and deities. It could be gnolls actually tend to fit this a little bit better than some other species. They are they are created directly to be chaos by Yeenoghu, in Forgotten Realms. They're not a tribal species. They are species that were created to basically spread chaos and destruction. They are, it's kind of rare that you get ones that mellow out, but they can mellow out.
Yeah.
Especially if they break ties from Yeenoghu.
Yeah. When you have these heavy influences that are sources of things, you can have these stories of things that are more inherently evil and bad. It's sort of, you know, I think it's sort of like, certainly speaking, you don't have to have every creature playable a lot of times too. Yeah. But like what I'm kind of talking about, there are plenty of, I would say, intelligent, like people level intelligent creatures you will encounter, even things that are semi-close. Like ogres aren't necessarily dumb or bad. They're just giant predatory creatures that do whatever the hell they want. You know, you have to think of them almost like that. So it's sort of like, to you, you're just food to an ogre, you know, or like, you know, a plaything. So like, ogres are kind of bad guys, but not because they like try to be a bad guy, just because they like, you know, they're tough creatures that just eat whatever.
Yeah, that is actually a problem I've noticed, is that in D&D, a lot of creatures like low intelligence tend to imply savagery and evilness, which is not the best thing to push, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I do agree on that one, that like, there is a fine line between like creatures that just have a, like, you know, they're maybe not as like high intelligent than your average like humanoid would be, but doesn't necessarily mean more savage. Like, certainly it could, like, you know, if you're saying like, oh, this thing is more like a predator species, it's a carnivore. Okay, I can see it being like maybe not savage but aggressive as the hunter or something like that, and it might, like, you know, and to you just might be food, you know, which is dangerous to you.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of brings me back to an idea I've heard people who work with big animals, like, you know, tigers and lions and that kind of stuff. You know, basically large predators. One of the big things is like, you do actually form bonds with these creatures. They're not, but like, you always got to remember that they're, like they always say, you got to always remember that they're a wild animal. If you do something that triggers their instincts, they're going to do, like, that's why you never turn your back and run on a lion, because that will trigger their instincts to chase and attack.
Honestly speaking, talking about that reminds me of a lot of ways they describe, like, in at least Pathfinder, ogres. Because ogres can live in societies and stuff too. It's just keep them well fed.
Yeah.
When they get hungry, they might get a little aggressive with things because you're smaller, squishy things. You know,
so it's almost better to make a dichotomy between instinct and intelligence rather than.
Yes, I think that's a better one. That, like, yes, it's kind of hard to do because they usually use the like int level for it. But I feel like there are creatures that maybe don't have that higher intelligence, but are like, it's not necessarily they're stupid. It's more like, you know, they just don't need it and they function more on instinct. You know.
Yeah.
And that might be good dichotomy too.
Yeah, it's almost better to think of it as burgeoning intelligence rather than low intelligence. You know, like, where it's all like, these are creatures. I mean, like Larry Niven, who actually worked on Star Trek stuff, did have some books where, well, a book I read. The book I'm talking about is Ringworld, but there are humanoids which basically devolved into more animalistic states on the Ringworld. The idea being that, like, they didn't need their intelligence because it was actually detrimental to them. But then there are also humanoids that retain their intelligence and stuff. And there's basically a whole thing about, there's almost a bit of speculative biology and how humans could evolve in different ways. But a bit of that. Not the main focus, but there's a bit of it. But yeah, it's but my point being is that, like, yeah, you can have that reverse evolution kind of stuff, and there's like ways to push it. It's kind of like, you've got a lot of elements. You've got natural elements like, you know, natural selection. And then you've got divine elements that can directly alter creatures, and you kind of have to bring a balance about those two. When writing for this kind of thing, writing monster species, because, like, you can have an ogre, you know, and I'm pretty sure this has been done in stories and stuff where it's like an ogre trying to behave with human, pushing back his instincts, trying to learn. Maybe he's not getting all of it, maybe he's kind of having issues, maybe he sometimes eats a person, but he's trying, you know? Yeah.
I think it's also the thing too, I think this is all reflecting back on, because we've advanced the way that we tell stories in role-playing games since the advent of D&D. A lot of times now, it isn't just, like, okay, there are some easy stories to be like, you find some bandits. You know, you don't have to really talk much about the motivation of bandits. But nowadays, fight some goblins. That feels more like, why are the goblins out there a little bit of times to do them? Granted, I feel like we are still not there in a lot of times, because it's still just like, you fight some goblins, or fight some orcs, you know, or something like that. You just randomly fight them, or something like that. That does tend to be just this generic fight you get.
I feel like that's a lot rarer now, at least in good writing. I feel like, you know, for new DMs, you might have that. Like, I did that. My first thing was, goblins attacked your cart. Why? You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the main story of the Fandelver. You know, they were just like, goblins attacked your cart. There you go.
Yeah. Well, that was like, I didn't even run Fandelver. This was my own path. This is my first attempt at running a game. Was goblins attacked their cart. This is where you get the cart story. I've briefly mentioned this, I think, before on this channel. Long time ago, though. Yeah. This would have been back in 2017, 2018. But yeah. But anyway, it's like, was there a reason? I don't know. But nowadays you tend to have a lot more purpose. Like, goblins tend to be just kind of chaotic creatures that are tolerated, but they're not a threat, but they also tend to cause a lot of problems. They have one little weird societies. But generally where the problem comes in nowadays in writing is when they get a charismatic leader, like a hobgoblin, who can organize them into their own deeds, you know, and it's usually someone nefarious, because those are the kind of people who rally people, let's be real. That is actually not uncommon. People who are charismatic do tend to do more evil deeds. And we just look at politics.
And again, it could also just be like, you know, it's simple a thing as like, this is our hunting area, you know, you haven't done anything to appease us for passing through, we're going to attack you. Where it's sort of like, you might not know to tell them. You know, that's the thing. Is,
Yeah. I mean, well, even more than that, it's like, well, food's been scarce. Those humans are crunchy and tasty. You know, I mean, they tend to poke us a lot more with their sticks. So, but you know, there's not much other food right now, so we should go after them. You know, it's like normally they're not a problem. Why? Because it's easier to eat other things. But now they're a problem because, you know, these other things are gone. Why are those other things gone? Or, you know, maybe someone, you know, or, you know, it could also be, you know, someone manipulated them into thinking this was better, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I think it's one of those things is,
with minimal intelligence, you can do stuff like that.
You want to tell a story that is a good story, and sometimes you don't need that, like, explanation for something to happen. But I think it's like, it's important to keep in the back of your mind why you're doing something. If I have this fight here with whatever creature it is, I should at least have a general idea of why this creature is, and it might be something players have. I don't have to even get full direction. I just maybe like this is the kind of thing in this area. Why is this thing in this area? Kind of just like a little bit of that kind of thing in the back of your mind, you know? Because I think that's kind of important to, you know, you want your world to feel, generally speaking, alive. And that's a good way of kind of doing it. Just have that little thought in the back of your mind.
Yeah, there's always reasons for there to be, like, you know, random animal attacks. Because basically the idea is, this animal pack, you know, this pack of wolves failed their hunt the last 2 times. Therefore, they're very hungry and desperate. So they're going to attack this group of people. And honestly, in that case, you can even have, like, they won't fight to the death, but they might fight close to it. You know, making it so they're unlikely to retreat until it's too late. You know, that's kind of a thing you can do. Like, that's totally reasonable. Although most wolves, which just see people, the moment they get hit, they should run away. You know, like, that's another thing. Like, if they're not hungry wolves, if they're not starving a bit, they probably, like, you hit them once and they're like, this isn't worth it. Bye.
Again, it's sort of like, you know, hey, you know, an elephant attacks you. Why? Well, you know, just look at the wild. If you get in its territory and, like, you know, get in its way, it might get angry at you. And territory's a thing.
Yeah. It's another thing to keep in mind. Like, you go into an animal's territory, they'll be like, hey, you're in my territory, either leave or you're food, you know? It's a very common mentality for animals. even animals of similar species, the same species.
Yeah. So I think definitely when you look at and I really wanted to put this more for like the especially like the humanoids that you get in fights with, or or like, you know, things like giants and stuff like that too. It all comes down to how these things look. Think about dragons. Dragons tend to look down on other creatures. You tend to get in a fight with a dragon. Well, they're gonna see you as at most trespassing, or at most food, you know, especially some of the more like, you know, more aggressive dragons will just be like, oh, delicious. Thank you for bringing me a snack, you know? You are not looked at as like an equal. And I think that kind of comes down to reasons why you would get into a fight with it. Now, granted, it doesn't mean you couldn't negotiate, and maybe good playing would give you an opportunity for that, but it's not like a necessity.
Yeah, fighting a dragon in their territory in Lair, like there's a whole dynamic there. Honestly, there's a reason there's good and evil dragons. So the evil dragons do tend to just be agents of, you know, evil. Red dragons and, you know, Faerun literally are people who are just, you know, evil deities. You know, like they're generally the agents of evil deities. They tend to worship something, Tiamat, etc. Tiamat, the obvious one, but yeah. And they're given a lot of times they're just paid in treasure because that's what they want more than anything. I mean, I would argue that it'd probably be easy to bribe a red dragon. Like, red dragons tend to be the most greedy in Faerun setting. So it's like, literally, if you're like trying to pass through an area with a red dragon and come down and be like, hey, you're in my territory, I'm gonna eat you. And then you can be like, because, you know, this is my land, so, and then you can be like, oh, pay me or leave. You know, like, a lot of them might do something like that, and it's like, players would never pay them, so they'd fight it.
Again, it can also come down to, like, you can just be like, dragons are creatures that are so powerful, sometimes they just let their instincts run until they want to rest, or, like, you know, like, sometimes they just, like, be like, let's let, you know, it's sort of like, people sometimes do that kind of thing, where they like going out into nature and feeling that and doing all that kind of stuff, too. Except, you know, dragons are just mute stuff.
Yeah. I mean, basically, dragons tend to have, like, one of two issues, or one of two reasons to start conflicts. One is either pride, well, okay, I should say three. Pride, greed, or, no, actually, I think it's just those two. Pride and greed tend to be the big things. Basically, they either want stuff, they either want what you have, which is why they want to kill you. You're a snack, but what you're carrying is also valuable, and they want that, too, for their horde. You know, ooh, adventurers, they have magic weapons. I'm going to kill them and take them. Then you've got, you know, the pride, which is more just like, I'm big, I'm stronger than them, and I want to prove it. I don't think dragons tend to be too intelligent to give fully into their instincts in that way. You know, they probably do have some instinct, but it's probably, if anything, it's more territorial, like, but they're also intelligent, so they'd probably growl, tell you to get out before attempting to fight you if they're running off instinct.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of like, and I think when we talk about it too, it's sort of like, I think it's a good way of displaying a lot of these things, especially in more modern days, is sort of like, when you talk about it and you do these more like violent or dangerous civilizations, you're like, yeah, stuff happened that caused this original society to be built. Nothing has happened to allow it to change. You know, it could just be like, you know, that's the thing. Violence, conflict, and all those kind of things, and, you know, like, battles between each other. And that's just the way they know things now, because nothing has happened to allow the society to change and evolve, and they've just been in that situation. And you could be like, that's where it started from. And that could be a reason why this group of people, or this species of people, or creatures, are aggressive and dangerous. There are ways that you can tell it very, very easily that way. You know, it's sort of like, oh man, you know, they went through this entire thing, it's very violent, and it kind of, you know, pushed them into this kind of violent way of doing things, and since then, they've, you know, just been that way, and they've had no reason to change. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that the part of the issue with like evil societies, like if you're now getting into like to talk about like societies that have issues, the vast majority of people have the mentality of the ends justify the means. I know some people, so it's like, I can kill this person because, like, I mean, and the ends could be like, I'm going to get rich. That way I can influence my idea of what is right on people. Therefore, I can kill this person to take their stuff to get what I want. That is kind of more the natural state of people. People are kind of generally, I wouldn't say inherently evil. What's funny is people inherently want to do good, but they're also like more inherently willing to do bad, but they tend to be willing to do bad to try and do that good.
Yeah.
Which makes it so, basically, for a society to be honestly altruistic in any capacity usually requires a single a good charismatic leader, which is pretty rare, or a good leader of some kind who's keeping things stable. Which is why things tend to stabilize around at points in time around individuals who actually make a difference. I'm not saying like you can't have good people in society. I'm talking about people, but generally the vast majority of the time, the people who get into power tend to be bad people because the people who want that power tend to take it.
It's
therefore,
like
there's a balancing act there.
Well, it's like again, I love using Pathfinder because I've done a lot of their lore and read a lot more than, let's say, like D&D lore and Forgotten Realms. I have gone Forgotten Realms, but Forgotten Realms tends to be like the cities and nations a lot more than like this particular like ancestries and species. But like it's sort of like we have that adventure path, the orc-based one, where they've got this charismatic leader who wants to lead his people from like, hey, we're just fighting each other here constantly in this area that people shoved us to because we just wouldn't get out of the fight. Let's build a society here, And also, there's this giant lich who at one time kind of like conquered us and used us as fodder, who wants to have us back, who we should kick the ass of, And sort of like enemy of my enemy, and a guy that's very charismatic on top, trying to lead these people from like, yeah, there are probably more ways that you can still have that violence in society. Like reading up on like the lands of Linnorm kings. In some of the better nations in those lands, the kings are finding ways to like take like, because they're like savage Viking type people, and channel that aggression they have in positive ways. Find ways that they can still have that tradition of that kind of aggression, but do it in a way that allows them to build a society and not like murder the crap out of each other. And there's like a step in between that you kind of have to take. And I think like, that's an example of like humans in this world doing that kind of thing and taking a step towards that direction. And it's like, it's not just humans that take direction there. Any species can. And sometimes you take a step from that, like, you are violent, aggressive to your neighbors and try to take what you can from them because that's the way you know about, and you had to be in, to building something more and better. It sometimes takes a little bit, or that leader, and a society will evolve. And it's one of those things is you still can have anybody in that position of being dangerous and killing. It can be more than just a bandit. It can be like if you're in an area that there aren't like major civilizations, it's just a group of people that live in this area and they don't take kindly to people coming in their territory, and they they were like, we put signs out, you ignored our signs, you might not know what they are, but they're like, that's what you did.
Yeah. And there was a very interesting video I watched on YouTube one time that talked about how dictatorial countries or even small oligarchical countries or kingdoms or those kind of things tend to stay bad because they tend to feed their own problems. Mm-hmm. Which is why it takes a long time, and oftentimes outside influence. Not that I'm not saying America should step in everywhere, but I'm saying that outside influence can sometimes be necessary. It depends on the situation. I'm not making any blanket statements here. But anyway, my point though is that you have a society that's very driven by dictators. You're going to get more dictators because when one dies, another one's going to try and take its place, that's how things are done, you know? Kingdoms, that's how things are done. You give it to your child, they rule with an iron fist. Actually, reading fairy tales, it's very interesting because kings were actually not viewed as great people in a lot of fairy tales. Like, the idea of the altruistic king that Disney and fantasy nowadays has kind of pushed is not in traditional fairy tales. Most kings in fairy tales are greedy, like people who like see something and want it. Most fairy tales are driven by a king going, "That's something I want. Who's willing to get it for me?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that there is a good evolution in many ways that we're telling stories nowadays. But it doesn't mean that we can't reflect upon the way that, like, a lot of these are. And you can still use a bunch of orcs fight your players, or a bunch of goblins fight your players, but, you know, treat them just like you would have a bunch of, you know, elves fight your players, a bunch of dwarves fight your players. You know, kind of treat it the same way, rather than making it just, honestly, stereotype, because it's been... We're only getting into better writing for a lot of other, basically, very near human species nowadays, for a lot of fantasy writing, or for out there, too. I think it's sort of like, sci-fi does a good job of being like, yeah, there are aggressive cultures, but just when you can work with them. Think of, like, in Star Trek, like, especially going Next Generation, the Klingons, or the Romulans. They are aggressive and dangerous to you, or even the Cardassians, especially going Next Generation. They are probably dangerous to what the Federation is, and they are aggressive and conquering people, but they can be displayed in ways that, well, Cardassians is a different story entirely. We were not getting that today. I just saw something on that. They're not very good displayed there. But anyway, if we just go for, like, you know, the Klingons, they're very warrior people. They're very aggressive. They like getting into fights. They like proving themselves in fights. They find ways of doing that don't necessarily mean killing the other guy.
Yep. And between the original series and Next Generation, the reason you go from Klingons being enemies to Klingons being allies is because, like, you originally have the Klingons like, oh, we ran into them, we kind of pissed them off, and then they're like, well, you dishonor us, we're going to destroy you all. And then, like, the inciting thing that kind of changed the tide was when the Romulans came in, trying to do their conquering, and the Federation actually, there was a few, one or two ships or something like that actually defended the Klingons to their own death. Yeah. You know, so they died protecting the Klingon outpost in time for Klingons to arrive. And that kind of turned the tide in their attitude, which allowed for treaties to happen and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was...
They proved themselves in battle, which is
the
very
Enterprise
much the Klingons
C,
want.
I think that did that.
Yes.
There were some other incidents that did help pave that. There was all the stuff with
yes.
Early treaties with, like, Kirk and stuff, where at least things were at peace, you know? But that was that point in time where, you know,
they turned to allies rather than
enemies. And it's a thing that, like, you know, it's that thing of different cultures can find ways to get along without hurting each other's cultures. Yes, there will always be kind of, like, integration sometimes when cultures meet and mix, but kind of like, I think it's what you kind of look at with our world today. If I talk about a nation in our world, there's usually at least one unique culture, if not a couple of unique cultures, because there be subcultures, in those nations that, even though they're global cultures, still reflect that traditional culture in a lot of ways. You know, if I go to a nation in Asia, it's going to feel like an Asian nation and have its own unique way of looking at things. If I go to India, India is very much its own unique culture. If I go to Africa, out of Africa, African nations are a little bit more.
Yeah, you know, every other step is a different.
Yeah, again, if that's us, that was, you know, Europe shoving them together. But there's a lot of unique cultures there that have that still identity, even if they are connecting with the outside world. Yes, there's a cultural exchange, there's evolution of those cultures, but a lot of people keep their cultural identity. And the same could be said in a lot of ways that, like, you know, sometimes these cultures clash, but you can find ways to hold them together. And that comes down to, you know, how different species, especially things that are intelligent and creatures, you know, and we get that in, like, a lot of sci-fi, that you get clashes, but you can find ways to work. And I think that kind of attitudes can apply very well when going downwards to places like Dragons and Fantasy. In a lot of ways, they display that. Fall of Avanswell. I haven't hid the fact that the people that your characters are playing, all your ancestors, total dicks. They basically rounded up everybody that found problematic and sent them to another continent. And when those guys got really angry and found a way to break out and started coming back and trying to kill everybody in revenge,
apparently by worshiping some weird entity. That's the vibe I'm getting from our very last encounter 2 weeks ago.
They found some kind of power that allowed them to break out.
Yep.
Something happened that allowed them to get the ability to leave there. It's supposed to be, there is no good side of this conflict, Certainly speaking, in this current place, the Dread Army is worse. They are inherently doing something that's really terrible and much more extreme than they should. Is there that kernel of, were they kind of really shit on to begin with? Yeah. So it's sort of like, it's supposed to be a muddy water kind of situation. That was the point of it, And that kind of thing can happen in a lot of these societal things, And I think,
it's kind of the argument. It's kind of the argument. Are people responsible for things their ancestors did? Is kind of almost Fall of Avanswell. It's all like their ancestors pushed these people away, but most people probably don't care anymore because there's a lot of integration that have started to happen outside of that. But then these people come in who were ostracized are now trying to, wreak revenge for something that happened generations ago.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I made it a muddy situation to begin with anyway. So it's kind of like your characters are just there like, look, man, we're not involved in this. We just want to try to survive and help the people we love, And I think that's a really good plant that I've kind of put for your characters. But again, that kind of harkens back to a lot of this entire thing is, these creatures are the enemy, but I have a story behind it. I have a reason why they're doing these things. And I think that helps with the storytelling to be, and again, not to bust on you, any DM out there just throwing like, fight some kobolds, That's fine. Again, but I like saying that, keep it in the back mind why those kobolds are there. Just maybe a little. Even players
the easy out is their culture is self-destructive and problematic. That's the easy out. But because that's honestly, that's not uncommon.
These group of kobolds, they ended up worshipping like an evil deity, and like when the prophets said to go do some stuff that was really bad,
Yep.
Maybe it's not all kobolds, but this one group, they got into a bad cult.
Yeah.
It could be simple as that.
So I mean,
cults today, bad cults.
Yep. Yeah, cults are their own thing. Oh gosh.
But I mean, that could be a reason behind her. There's again, bad person takes over.
Yeah. There's a simple explanation. Honestly, that's almost another topic is cults. How to do cults, although.
I guess that's a good one to talk about. Sometime I might add that to the list here.
Because cults are different because it's all like they tend to have. Honestly, I feel like a lot of cults are there's a lot of cults in games that are like, why does this cult exist? But there are ways to do it, because like a lot of people think like, okay, well, fanaticism to the point of being able to die for what you believe in is an interesting topic. It's like
I think it's like it is a difference between the cults we know about nowadays because like
nope.
No. What I mean is between the cults that were like the older cults. Is what I mean. Like there is a difference between them and now, because a lot of times the cults that we see in a lot of fantasy, at very least, are probably more reflective on like those like forgotten or pushed away deities and stuff like that, rather than someone inventing a particular like religion and being a cult of personality and drawing people to them. But there can be that overlap between them. I'm not saying there isn't.
Yeah, you generally need that to propagate a cult.
Yeah. But again, like,
whether or not the divine influence is real or not is more like.
I feel question. Like, again, it's you could probably like they do have a lot like more like cult stuff in like something more like Shadowrun. That's more like a post-apocalyptic kind of world that there's a lot more like fractured beliefs and stuff that kind of come out. So you can kind of understand that there.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, but there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about with cults. Like I read a bunch of stuff one time about cults just because I was very interested in how they functioned and also thought about using that for D&D games and stuff. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that should make cults different than just a normal religious organization.
Look, I tried a game with cults, Records of Evil. You guys were like an extremist cult of Asmodeus. And it was weird. It went weird. I guess because storyline
being in a cult
people
is problematic for players.
You guys, I think it became weird because like you guys were all in a cult and then the leadership died. So sort of like you were all like people that were indoctrinated. You're like, well, what do we do now?
Basically, we needed legitimate divine influence to keep our cult going because we were just like a bunch of nobodies.
So that's why
I was the only legitimately evil person. Well, and Momo.
Yes. I think you were definitely more like neutral evil, and Momo was more lawful evil. But the people that were, you had a couple of people that were just in there because of like personal reasons, and it was like, wow.
The other two were, one of them was chaotic good, the other was chaotic neutral.
And you could just be like, oh my god, they were just in there for like family reasons, and it's just it was so crazy the way that worked out. And the thing is, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like that is very appropriate for like an extremist cult. Recruiting people. They're not all there that are like they're your true believers. So I guess that like it did work out in a lot of ways, but it was pretty interesting. Anyway, we're getting very side tangent.
Yeah. Definitely another topic.
But anyway, I didn't want to get into specific details, but like there's a lot of people that don't exposés on things like, the way it works are displayed in a lot of these popular media and stuff like that too, and that can hit that. And there sometimes are in various places. And again, I think also like this harkens into my other topic I want to talk about, which is like old lore that has problems. Because sometimes there's like that like core of something that's like, not necessarily problematic, but could be interpreted as problematic, but there's also stuff that is actually problematic.
Yeah, the problem is when you make something, you call something inherently evil, where a lot of the old problem with the old stuff is, like the old D&D 1E, 2E stuff, is that like, you called these people inherently evil, but you had no backing for why. Like Tolkien had like elves literally corrupted to make orcs, if I remember correctly. Like,
like, it's the thing is, like, hearing I just saw someone talk about the history of, like, orcs and stuff in D&D, and it's sort of like, it's so interesting that in very early on, they were just kind of like creations of evil, kind of things like that. And then 3rd edition came along and was like, hold my beer. And I'm sorry, I forgot all about this. Because again, it's like one of those things that's like I never really dived into. The lore of orcs in 3rd edition is kind of bad. Kind of like, not only bad, it's problematic to a degree in that. It's like, it would have been kind of bad early 2000s, sort of like, what are you talking about? I guess it's they wanted to lean into that evil aspect of them, and so they did to the more extreme,
Okay.
And I think it's sort of like, it feels like it was for no good reason other than like, oh hey, they worship Grumsh. Grumsh is bad. Yep, Grumsh is bad. So
yeah,
I don't know. That comes down to what you were saying, like a deity creates an evil race too, and I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm not gonna lie, like with a lot of like the other humanoid races that are in most of this fantasy literature, usually a deity created them for reasons, but then you get a lot of like mixture of like good or bad in so many of them, and it's sort of like it can lead them to begin that way, but I do feel like they evolve quickly over time. Like like, I'm sorry, elves. There's a lot of jackass elves out there. Corellian did not create them to be bad. They created them to be good.
Yeah, I think gnolls are better in D&D because they are like directly influenced by Yeenoghu's like hunger, and then like they're actively like violent just by nature. Some seem to get away and be okay, but it's they're actively directly influenced, which is what makes them evil. Like they're created, They're propagated for the purpose of an evil deed.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you have a lot of direct influence from your evil corrupting source. There, it does continue a lot that way.
Yeah, but orcs are like, we have this shaman. She doesn't literally control us. She just tells us what to do because, she gives me some advice while I go beat up someone because I'm the leader because I beat up everybody.
Yeah, I kind of listen to her half the time.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not religious. I just like violence. It's like, what?
Yeah, that's the more traditional like Droosh loving orc society. It's like, God damn it,
Yeah.
Again, at very least, when they describe the Knoll society, they're like, yeah, the high priest or priestess of Unigol is like one in charge. So they'll literally have the religion in charge of it, or like very traditional Drow, where they have the people in charge of law. Again, that's kind of Drow are such a weird issue with a lot of this kind of thing, but that's an entirely different problem that kind of goes in between this one.
Drow are better built though as well because their society is actually built to propagate itself. I think orcs just have the biggest problem because they're just like, oh yeah, orcs are inherently violent, which is why they worship the god of violence, but that's why they're inherently violent, is because they worship the god of violence. It's like, that's a circular argument. That doesn't work.
At very least, like, it's the thing about, like, when we talk about Drow, I do think they needed up thing because they had a very large society. And I'm sorry, I do think they went too far and be like, oh, well, it's just a little cult. There's, like, a few of them left over, nowadays when they talk about them in, like, 5th edition. But, like, I feel like that, like, they do that in favor. They're like, oh, just lost a little cult. They're not really in charge anymore. And I'm like, I don't think it would have gone that from, like, it went from, like, 100 to 0. Where I feel like finding maybe, like, around, like, 50 to 33% would have been more logical if a society walks away from that thing. I do feel like...
I should clarify, when I say Drow is fine, I'm talking about, like, the actual lore for Drow. Like, recent Drow, they just kind of dropped it and ignored it. But I'm talking about, like, the actual lore from, like, books and stuff that they've done.
It's not the best lore, but it's not the worst lore, I think. That's the thing. It's kind of that, like, it's fine.
It is, but it's at least consistent. Like, there are actual hierarchies which, basically do Inquisition-type stuff to keep people, from leaving, and they enslave people who aren't following things, their doctrines and stuff. So they actively, like, control their society, which is why it's propagates itself.
Again, and this is not getting into, like, this is just getting into the basics of, like, this enemy here, because it's sort of like, why would you get into a fight with this group here, too, And it could just be as simple as, like, if you're in the Underdark, it could just be, oh, hey, you're entering the territory. I mean, I'm kind of like, again, territory is such a great way of saying, like, you get in a fight with someone. And especially if the people that defend their territory adamantly, they're probably going to fight you first. They might not kill you if you're just an intruder. They might try to capture you, but they might attack you first,
Yeah. Honestly, a good... I mean, funny enough, probably less extreme. Drow, basically, in my idea, is basically a less extreme version of North Korea. That's why they keep themselves. Everyone has to believe what they believe. Like, they don't let people out. They actively control their population.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like. There are points in times where you talk about, like, this kind of thing, and again, this is kind of like going over with another topic. I'm going to talk about, like, the old problem lore, because I can kind of, like, pick up and dust off pretty much 95% of Dark Sun. Be like, this is problem lore.
Yeah.
There's like this core of really cool stuff in here, but then there's this layer of, like, stuff on top you have to kind of blow off. And 4E tried to do that. But we'll have to talk about that at some point in time, because, like, I did see, like, a really cool video that talked about, discussing where things are for something like Dark Sun. It was a very interesting take on it. That's a little different than mine that I love.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Ultimately, though, just give a reason. I mean, that's the thing. People do stuff for the worst reasons, and just don't paint everyone with the same brush, unless they are literally... like, divinely influenced to be that way. Like, there are ways to do it, like mind control, the divine influence, even just a charismatic leader, lots of reasons.
It comes down to, like, again, your players may never know the motivation for something, but at least for your storylines and for how you are building your world, however it is, having a little bit of motivation is great. It's one of those things is like, it both is a blessing and a curse in like old Adventure Pass and Pathfinder, especially. Because I haven't read as much of the newer Adventure Pass, but they love giving you all these details that do help establish why something is in a place, which is great for you as a DM because you understand the world. The players never find 95% of that stuff out. Why the hell is this here? Okay.
Yeah, you generally just need enough. But I would argue that even if you know why these creatures are behaving the way they are, your players will notice that there's logic behind it. Even if, if you just throw enemies at them, they can tell, oh, these are just enemies that you throw at us for a fight. But if they attack and, even if they just behave in a certain way or try to retreat, just do actual normal things, they think, oh, is there a reason for this? Yeah.
It's sort of it's like even when you have things like, you never got to it, but in my little dungeon thing I did in Fall of Avonswell, I had a list of random encounters. I chose all those creatures for reasons that they would be there. I was like, what would be in this area? Why would they be down in this weird maze of tunnels? I asked those questions. And, something like, I think the badgers were when you fought, and that was like, well, they live down there.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Territory.
Yep. Where they live, and you've got their territory, and badgers are aggressive and assholes.
Yeah, badgers are kind of a unique level of asshole that,
Just, let's go to Africa and pick up a honey badger. Ugh. They're the extreme version of it, but I'm sorry.
Honey badgers are the most extreme.
Yeah, but even American European badgers aren't far off from that.
European badgers are probably the nicest. That doesn't mean they're nice; they're just the nicest. And then you've got American badgers, and then African badgers are the worst.
Yep. You don't care. All right. I think that's a good discussion on enemy species, as we so call them, monster species. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. I think this is a fun one to do, and I think this is a really great one. I do say this about. I probably should say this about all of them, but if you when I put this up on YouTube, you can put it in the comments, just your ideas or discussions about how to do this here and why you have the motivations. Just let us know in the comments.
Yeah, comment your thoughts. Tell us if you think we're wrong about something.
Yeah, let's have a reasonable discussion on these things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about our week in tabletop. Did we do a lot?
No, we didn't have Joe's game because everyone had stuff to do.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of was half hoping he'd just push it off a week, so that I'd really get unhooked from my trips to my grandmother's. But he's waiting 2 weeks.
To be fair, I kind of wouldn't mind that either because my grandma's funeral is on the 8th, so I might be back in time, but I don't know.
Unfortunately, at least the next time we're playing is the week that I wasn't planning with my grandma. I try to go once.
Yeah.
You didn't have Joe's game. You didn't have Fall of Avonswell. Do you do anything in between there?
No, I've been reading through the closest thing I've done to RPG stuff is I've been reading through the Daggerheart rules because I'm like, I kind of want to use these. They're actually a very nice rules light system that still also has a decent amount of stuff to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should check it out sometime for trying out some of
these. Yeah, especially the combat is very light. It's kind of interesting because the combat, I found it interesting. Players actually basically go until they fail. So they either have to fail a roll or roll a success with fear, which is one of their 2 dice. So it's very likely for them to fail, for it to train. But then it goes to the GM. The GM can also interrupt them by using fear, but that's one of the ways to. So there's a whole. It's kind of interesting. So the combat is very fluid. It's not like you take 3 actions, then the next person takes 3 actions. There's no initiative.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I did do a little bit more on the back end. No, I did. Instead of Fall of Avonswell, Joe had us assemble, and we managed to grab me and Blaze, and so we got Tabletop Simulator working. That was the good news because we had, for whatever reason, Tabletop Simulator had broken for us, between me,
Everyone?
between me and no, just me and Joe. Me and Joe could not connect together. I do not know why. You know, it was some kind of issue that we would break. But even if Blaze hosted it, it was a very weird kind of situation. But it was just working. I don't know if it was just some kind of problem that we'd say. We're not sure. Anyway, so Joe, in his infinite wisdom, is like, let's play Munchkin. We're like, okay. He finds I'm pretty sure, custom-made, so it's not a real thing, Fallout Munchkin. It's partially in Russian. So there are, like, sections of the normal rules just in Russian. We didn't finish the game. We're talking about getting back to it at some point now. Maybe. But it was hilarious. And we're like, I just kept putting on a bad Russian accent. The kind of one you'd just be like, to anybody in real life, you're like, sorry, but you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it certainly was an interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we're missing some rules in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had my game today. Honestly, it was just a bunch of combat. I didn't do a ton of stuff because my character doesn't do a lot with ship combat. Well, I should clarify, actually. My character can do a lot. I can't do a lot against undead because I do illusions, and in 2E, they're kind of immune.
Yes.
Granted, I do have a subclass that allows me to do illusions to them. It just didn't feel worthwhile. I'm going to be honest. It was like, we kind of had this handled. All the paladins were just wading through, or the paladin and clerics were just raiding through them.
Yeah.
Sorry, priests. And so it was just like, I'm just gonna throw my sling and kill one of them. Actually, to be fair, I did crit once and then roll minimum damage on that crit, on said crit. But yeah, so and then afterwards we pulled away, and then it was just like finally got uncoupled from the ship that rammed into us, and then fought off some more ships, and then we didn't immediately go to the planet we were heading towards, and instead deviated to try and find some asteroids that may have had trees on them so we could repair our ship. Because we got rammed, like I said.
Yes. Gotta repair all the damage from before.
Mm-hmm. We got down to, I want to say, like 8 health on our ship from like 20 something.
Damn.
Yeah.
You know, I will always have a soft spot for like ghost ships, just because not anything I did, but I will always remember in a game where it was a ship game. We were on a ship, and a ghost ship came up, and so they dropped like a boarding plank, and skeletons and zombies were pouring over, and our fighter just took a step up and started doing like swaths through the enemy and taking steps across the gangplank and stepped onto the enemy ship. Just waded through the enemies trying to rush across. I will always remember that. I'm like, none of us are as cool as your character.
Yeah. Honestly, we actually got very lucky, too, because twice. So, like, if you miss a ship and there's, like, 2 ships coupled, the GM will, like, roll to see if the other ship gets hit.
Yeah.
Twice, they missed us and hit the other ship while we were entangled.
Whoa.
So, like, yeah. And that was when we were at, like, super low. Our ship was at super low health because we were, like, yeah.
So got some good luck in it, too.
Yeah.
Alright, I guess it's a good place to stop there.
Yep.
We'll give your shout out. I'll throw that over.
Yeah, I'm DiamondWyrm. You can find me on twitch.tv/DiamondWyrm or at DiamondWyrm on Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. YouTube is DiamondWyrm9234. Hopefully someday I'll get enough people watching me to fix that. I'll be streaming tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. PDT. Yeah.
Cool. I myself, I'm gonna just tell people, I might give a bonus stream to finish up that last video, but I honestly might push it next week. I had it ready, but with everything that's been going on, I can't guarantee that more stuff or more calls of me making physical activity might pop up during this weekend. Still. So, I might just move the schedule around a little bit and move the Innistrad video that was supposed to be this week to next week. Is all set up. So, hey, I got a Magic video all in the can, so to say, you know? Not a lot of work for it. So, yeah, it's easy. But, check out more Tabletop. I'll play more Jedi Survivor. I'm never doing that. Come join us for Friday Friends. Fallout Outers will hopefully be back on Wednesday. That's at 8. And then join next week for Discussing Tabletop. If you're over on the YouTube side, please get the various support there, the subscription, something that one for that. And make sure to check, make sure to just let us know what you... Again, you engaging with us, letting us know what you think about all the stuff in the comments is always good. Definitely. And especially on our deeper discussion topics. I'd love to have some more discussions. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. And see you next time. Bye.